And you are watching/listening to another edition of Blewetts Blitz Live. Been a little bit, again, shaky with all the hours and stuff. I'm sorry for that. It just comes with the job. I am once again joined by Michael Nania, who will be hosting every other week at this point. We locked Nania down every other week. We got Sabo once a month. I think the other show once a month is probably going to be a call-in type deal. It's probably what I'll do. But Nania, how you doing, man? Officially flipped to August. We got 9 days until Jets football. We have preseason football tonight where we'll be watching, I believe, Davis Mills. I think they have Tim Boyle on the Texans now, actually, as well. I'm not sure who's on the Bears who will be watching. But with all that being said, football is officially back tonight. So how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad training camp is here. I know there was a long stretch where it was a lot of, it was all about the rankings. It was all about just the storylines you kind of had to drum up out of nowhere. So I'm glad training camp is here. Although there are still, some reservations I have about, which reports should I trust? How much of this really matters? So there are still some of those caveats in terms of, how much stock should actually be placed into a lot of this. But one thing I've realized, and I wrote an article about this today, but, comparing some of the things that we're, worried about right now or some of the concerns and drama of this camp and just looking back to August 1st of last year or August 1st of 2017, 2020, pick your year and go back to this same day and think about some of the things we were talking about then compared to today. It's like, Joe Titman had some bad snaps, or Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson are passionate about football and are trying to be great. And these are the things that we're talking about versus we literally don't have a quarterback. We don't know who our starting corners are. We don't have an edge rusher. We don't have a single offensive lineman you could trust. Compare all that to what we're worried about right now. And I just find a lot of joy in that progress. The Jets have sucked and it sucks for us that we've had to suffer through all of that. But I also find a lot of, enjoyment in that difference, between what we've put up with and just now to be in this spot where it feels like it's very low stakes and a lot of the so-called problems are very minor. So I do enjoy that aspect of it.
I love how you phrased Rodgers and Wilson are passionate about football. I love that. That was a little dig right there. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, no, I'm excited, man. 9 more days until Jets football. The first game is that the Commanders, I believe, or I could be wrong. It's Commanders, and then is it Eagles Giants? I forget. I don't know who the second game is.
Panthers Giants.
Giants. Okay.
Game.
Yeah, Jets have quite a few. The upcoming weeks too, they have quite a few of the joint practices as well, which is obviously really, really good. You say, hey, we struggle against cover 6, and when we run this play, can you guys run that for us? It's nice to be able to coordinate those things, red zone opportunities, what you're weak in, what they're weak in. So I think you get transparently or not transparently. I think coaches, and they've said it before, that you get a lot more out of those joint practices than you actually get out of the preseason games for the most part. So I like that the Jets are going against some of those teams, and you look at it too. It's like, listen, and you're hoping it kind of instills some confidence in the Jets, because if you're not dominating in practice against the Commanders, the Panthers, the Giants, then we got some problems. So hopefully they are, dominating them. And maybe it was an issue last year. You talk about the offensive line. Against the Panthers, we were seeing a Hard Knocks. They were getting beat up versus the Panthers, and I was going to
say on that note, quickly, just to go off what you're saying, I think that that shows the value of joint practices. Looking back at that Panthers practice, the offensive line was terrible, and that is what we were talking about every day. And look what happened. So I think there still is some value you could take out of that.
For sure. And maybe we had some blinders on, but I remember being worried about it. Hey, the Panthers are beating you up. That's the team that we're getting beat up in versus practice for the offensive line. But we knew it. Hey, they didn't do enough last year. We've talked about it a million times. Dwayne Brown and Becton are not the answer, and they never were the answer going into last year. And that's not revisionist history. We were saying that for months before the season. But yeah, exciting times. So you're saying that there's going to be no need to trade Aaron Rodgers or Garrett Wilson. Not one has to go. It's not a thing where we've come to a head and they need to separate at this point because it's such a bad situation in the locker room now where they're blowing up on each other. You think we're going to be okay as a team, Nania?
No, I actually disagree with that. I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers has the audacity to miss a couple of mini camp practices because he's in Egypt. scaling the pyramids or whatever he was doing over there. And then he wants to come back and like scream at your young wide receiver and just like hurling curse words at him, whatever he's doing. Like, it's just, I can't believe he has the audacity to do that. So I would expect probably a Rodgers trade, maybe Wilson, because they do seem to cave to Rodgers. So maybe Wilson within the next couple of days. They do have Alan Lazard to hold it down in the event that they trade Wilson. So I would expect that trade within the next few days. I mean, Tarik Cohen already wants out because he can't stand Rodgers anymore. So yeah, he's a cancer.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, I just remember something else I wanted to say about like the problems we're having. Running back 4, who's the returner, who's tight end 3, how much fullback are they using, all this stuff. It's like, and we haven't even seen anything good yet, but like, and maybe it's just because we got out of this shithole, but I cannot imagine being in the years of like 2020. We remember we did the top 25. We look back at 2020 and we saw our top 25 that was multiple weeks ago and like how bad it was. I just never want to be back there. Like even just being an okay team, like Rodgers leaves, we get a rookie, whatever. We absorb some big contracts. We eat the dead money. We're 8-9, 9-8 team for a couple of years, whatever it may be. I just can't. I don't know how we're gonna deal with being, if we get back to like a 2 or 3 win team in the near future after Rodgers. Like, I don't see it happening, especially if the Jets keep their core together because they never really had talented players. But let's just enjoy it while it lasts, because we only may have like really 2 years of legitimate Super Bowl contention. Like you look at this roster, and like you said, we're getting mad about running back 4. We're getting mad about Madden rankings and all of this stuff instead of actual like football things. I think the only legit gripe people have right now is the Reddick stuff, which we'll get into in a little bit, but we'll kind of keep it on the trend with Rodgers, mentioning him. Obviously, seeming, they both came out in interviews, both him and Garrett Wilson. They had some heated discussions, but again, it's more from like people who I've seen who don't play football who are saying this stuff. And it's not a shot at any statistical guys or anything like that, but it's like people get heated like that. Like, and I'm not comparing these guys to any of these other players, but like Kobe, I'm sure, had heated discussions with his teammate. Michael Jordan had, because they want to be perfect. Garrett Wilson is the ultimate competitor. We saw that in his documentary, and we knew that about him, off the jump. And Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Like, they want to get it absolutely perfect. And when something isn't perfect, they're going to have, discussions about it. They want to get better. They both talked about it after, like, hey, we're the ultimate competitors. We're laughing after it. We're boys. Like, Rodgers said the same thing about Titman. Like, Titman, he saw that Titman can take some hard coaching from Keith Carter, so he gets on Titman's ass a little bit as well. Like, it's what happens in football. The overreactions to this stuff and trying to make it like something that it's not, because I don't know if it's because of the Jets or people just suck at journalism or they're just looking for the easy story, whatever it is. But like, my God, man, it is such a non-story. It really is.
This one is just the most shocking to me, because even like the mini camp thing, like, that was 100%, fabricated too. But this one especially is like, you just watch the clip and by the end, they're always like shaking hands or laughing or whatever. It's clearly not like there's no animosity whatsoever. And yeah, like anyone who's played a sport, like I never played football, but I played a lot of basketball, and like, my closest friends, I'll play with them. And sometimes I'll take bad shots or I'll miss a pass or I'll hog the ball too much. And like, they'll get on you. And like, that's just part of the game. Like, you're trying to be better and, just win. And like, I'm reading the, you mentioned Kobe. I'm actually reading his autobiography, the, Mamba Mentality book right now. It's really, really good. And he just gives a lot of very detailed insight into like his mindset. And you can get that sense of like how much of a perfectionist that he was. And a big part of that is, getting the most out of your teammates and trying to instill the same thing within them. And like, throughout reading this, I could definitely picture Rodgers having the same mindset in a lot of ways, because I don't think you could get to that level of excellence without being that way. Because like all these guys in the NFL, in the NBA, whatever league it is, these are the top 0.1 percenters of the millions of people who play this sport around the world. So the physical talent is not that much different between these guys. What sets apart the best of the best is who's the most insane to take it that seriously. And Rodgers has that, and we've seen it over the years. And it's really good to see that manifested in this team, because the Jets haven't had psychopaths like that who are this intense about the game. It's usually the storylines are about people who don't show up to their birthday party, or they get punched in the face by their teammates or whatever. So, this is a positive, if anything else. And it's just shocking how many people either are too dumb to recognize it, or they just blatantly don't care so they could blow it up and get some likes and retweets.
It's probably a nice combination of both of the dumb and just getting the retweets. But no, it's a great point, man. Like it's a lot of these guys, like especially the elite players, have the elite mentality, and you have to have the elite mentality to be in the NFL in general for the most part. Like you said, like you can go to a park in Brooklyn and find guys who are dominant basketball players, or you can look at guys like who the Jets brought on, like what was Odell Beckham's cousin's name, who's like an absolute freak and a unit, but he sucked at football. Like it's a mentality thing, it's a technique thing, it's how calm you are under pressure, it's a lot of stuff. So they have this elite mindset, and they're going to want to get better. You know, Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson wants to be the number one receiver in the NFL, and he has a legitimate case to Justin Jefferson. Okay, maybe not if you're going to not argue him over JJ, but like, who's to say he doesn't have 1,600 yards this year? And he's the number 2 receiver in the NFL next year. Like it could easily happen. You know, he has that in his capability, and Rodgers could be a top 5 quarterback. Like they have elite mindsets. So it's just such a joke that, we're even kind of talking about this, but we have to recap it. But Nania, talking about basketball, I actually heard Nania is a little bit of an underrated basketball player, probably a little bit maybe unorthodox. But Nania, if you had to compare your game to somebody, who is Nania's game molded after? Who'd you look up to, and who'd you study, and who is Nania on the court? What position, player, comp?
I mean, I take after a lot. Like I have sort of an addiction. I mean, the summer weather is terrible, but like I'll see a highlight or something, and I just feel like I have to mimic it. So I'll go to the park in the 95 humid southern weather, and I'll be like, I just have to get it right. So I take after a lot. But in high school, they always called me Ginobili, and I do see it. I have a lot of craftiness to my game. I have the outside shot, but I'm willing to get into the mid range. My driving I do have the Euro in my package, the Euro step. My finishing around the basket, pretty creative. I have pretty good passing vision, sometimes a little ambitious with it, and I'll try to fit it into windows I probably shouldn't. So similar to the Jets quarterbacks in that way. But Ginobili is what I kind of have drawn the most. So I'll go with that.
I could see it too with the skin tone and the facial hair as well. You guys are kind of similar in terms of that. But going back to Rodgers too, the whole preseason thing. You had him say that in the I don't know if it was a press conference or the interview with Kay Adams or whatever it was, but he was saying that it was news to him that he's not playing the first 2 preseason games. Obviously, he played 1 drive last preseason and got a touchdown, or was it 2? He only played 1 or 2 drives last year. I think it was only 1.
Just the 1
to my remembrance.
2 drives, but he got the 1 touchdown. The first one, remember I think they went 3 and out. Then they scored the next one.
Yeah. So, do you have a preference for this? What are your opinions on Rodgers not playing in that 3rd preseason game? A drive, 2 drives. Where do you kind of stand on the whole Rodgers playing or not playing in preseason?
I feel like I've found myself debating over it more than I thought I would. I figured I would just be like blatantly no without even thinking about it. But I have kind of debated over it in terms of like, is there value to letting him experience just a little bit of game action before, first hits, being under that high pressure Monday night spotlight in San Francisco against that defense. But I mean, Rodgers talked recently about, or I think Salah said this as well, but those joint practices almost having the same, if not more value than preseason, and just similar intensity overall. So, even if the quarterback isn't getting hit. So hearing that makes me think like, just don't take the risk. He can get the value from the joint practices, but I'd probably lean towards that just because, after what happened, like you would love to minimize the risk as much as possible. But if they do it, I do understand it. So I'm not like vehemently against it. I guess I would say.
Yeah. I'm kind of just at the point where it's like, hey, whatever Rodgers wants to do it. I get like the practice. You probably get more like mentally from the practices, I would say, but there's still something to like a 300-pound defensive lineman, hitting you in the chest after you throw a ball. That you want to get those jitters out before, Monday Night Football against the Niners. So if he wants to, okay, fine. If he doesn't, then it is what it is. Like I'm not like one party or the other, So. And I think I forget exactly how the tweet was formulated, but Adam Schefter, I think you saw that as well. He formulated a tweet that kind of indicated that the Jets will not play Rodgers in the preseason because he's recovering from an ACL injury.
Right,
I think the phrasing was like Robert Saleh said that Rodgers will sit the first 2 preseason games, comma, who is recovering from an ACL surgery. So he was like smart to put the comma in there because he mentioned like, oh, this is what Saleh said, comma, he is recovering. But the way he phrased it, he was trying to make it seem like he's still recovering from the Achilles injury when he's not at all. So Schefter has really like put the last couple of years, he's growingly, he's creeping up the top of my shit list. Like he seems like he's a little bit scummy at times. I'm not the biggest Schefter guy anymore.
The gap between him and like the ML footballs and Dov Kleiman's is kind of getting pretty small at this point.
Yeah, no, I prefer Rappaport at this point, but like just the way that he phrases stuff, and maybe it's because the whole Rodgers like said lose my number thing to Schefter, and he hates Rodgers and all that stuff. But I think he actually grew up a Jets fan, right? Like he was in some of those documentaries, but maybe he just his Rodgers hate boils over. I don't know. But yeah, just ridiculous too, man. Like some of the media members that I used to like respect some of them, you know, Schefter or Josina Anderson's another one who I've lost like all respect for recently. They're just, some of them are just brutal. The guy from PFT, whatever his name is with the Rodgers hate, like people are just so biased. It's crazy, but nonetheless, that's exactly what we try not to do here on Just X Factor. I'm gonna get into the chat a little bit. So what we're gonna do today, we have an hour and a half. I'm going to get into the chat a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about camp, and then we're going to go through the rosters of the AFC East and kind of stack up the position groups against each other. So who has the best quarterback position group, you know, running back group, safety group, and whatever, and we add points to it, and we kind of see where we stand in the division. So Nani, actually, while we're talking, I'm pulling up chats and stuff. If you want to pull up the Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Pats, Lads depth chart, maybe you could save that or share that in a little bit. So I'm not putting you on the spot. And we'll get to the rest of the chat. Matt, I was just calling Matt now. I'll call him Matt, which I don't know if I've seen you in a little bit. But who is going to have the return duties? I think you're probably leaning towards Gibson and Corley at this point. I think you could put a Davis back there, you know, potentially. Maybe there's another like dark horse candidate, but I think this question probably stems from the fact that Tarik Cohen retired, which interesting. Like he just had a press conference that he's fully back, looking forward to the opportunity. You know, Rodgers is a wizard, all this stuff, and then he retires, which seemingly like, hey, you took 4 years off from football. I know he's recovering from his, I think he had an Achilles injury as well, right, on video. And then he said he got fat and all that stuff. So you took 4 years off of football. He probably didn't love it in the first place. Now he came back and apparently he's not loving it again. So a little bit surprising though, because if you put a gun to my head last night, I would say Tarik Cohen's going to be running back 4 for the Jets. So what are your thoughts about Tarik Cohen, and then parlay that into talking about the returners?
Yeah, it's definitely surprising because when he just spoke to the media, it seemed like he was, had a rejuvenated energy, seemed like he liked his fit in the new kickoff rules. So, yeah, definitely out of left field, and it seemed like he was gaining momentum to win that role, like you said, because when they signed him, I did not have high expectations just because, 29-year-old running back with all those injuries, I wasn't going to get my hopes up, but it seemed like he was looking pretty good. So, yeah, it definitely affects the RB4 battle, the returner battle. I'm interested to see how it affects that, more so the running back battle, because, does that now give Izzy Abanikanda a chance to crack the roster, or Valladay, like one of those guys, do one of them even make it at this point? Because I don't know, because Cohen could have justified it because the return abilities, and he showed like he could be a good receiver out of the backfield. But, those two running backs that I mentioned, Izzy hasn't shown us all that much yet. So would they even keep a fourth running back at this point if one of those two guys don't show anything? So I'm curious to see the impact of that. And then returner, I think it was interesting recently. They said, how they were working in Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis into that mix as well. Mm-hmm. I kind of like Davis as a fit for that. And I've said this before, even though he doesn't have the long speed, I feel like that matters less now because it's kind of more like a play from scrimmage. So the fact that he has the vision and the short area explosiveness, I feel like he can be really consistent at just finding the hole, breaking through, and getting you to the 35, 40, maybe 45. Like, he's probably not going to score a touchdown for you. Yeah. But I think he could be really consistent versus, some of the other guys might have more ball security issues, things like that. But yeah, I thought, my money would have been on Cohen to make the roster and potentially even be that returner. So it is surprising, but I think all these guys have good potential in that role. So it's not the end of the world either.
Yeah, and if you had to bet, and I'm gonna get into Johnny, like this is kind of going off of Johnny Boy's question right here, what's up, Johnny Boy? Says with Cohen retiring, the fact that Izzy or Gibson was going to get cut, what does that say about them as players? A dude that was out for such a long time beat them out for a job. I would say that I don't think Gibson was going to get cut because of Cohen. I think Gibson's going to make the team regardless. He's obviously like falling a little bit by the wayside now because he's injured, but I still do think that Gibson's probably a lock for the roster. So I would say that about Izzy though, like, hey, Cohen retiring now, Izzy may make it. But if you had to say, kind of like turning this into a question, Cohen was the 53rd guy on the roster. Cohen retires. Who now makes the Jets team? Who is not going to make the team a day ago? If you had to say, and obviously it's a hard question to answer, right? Like, but like, obviously you talk about maybe a little bit about fullback. We brought in a new tight end in Ferkser. We got rid of Bawden. So do they now carry like Yaboa? Is it Brownlee? Is it Irv Charles? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Like Bawden getting released recently makes this interesting because if there's no fullback, like does now that open the door for Izzy if they want to just view him as a developmental guy, as another back, because there's no fullback. But I feel like Bawden could still come back. I know they released him last year. I think it was last year, maybe the prior season. But there was one point where they released him.
No, they did, because that's when Rodgers came back to practice. They released Bawden, and everybody made the whole stink about that, and he came back.
And it was wasn't it his birthday?
I think? Something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, I could still see him coming back. But I mean, I don't know. It's just it's easy to slide in Izzy as that next replacement, but we just haven't. Like, he has not made a lot of buzz in camp, from what I've read in camp so far. He did not play well in the regular season last year, even though it was very limited. He just didn't really impress in any way, and he fumbled, he dropped passes, wasn't making guys miss. So there's just nothing there to this point. But if he could light it up in the preseason, the door is open now. It's hard to expect that based on you haven't seen much in camp. So I would say him. Like, that's the easiest, most direct answer, but it could be like another defensive lineman. Like, there are these undrafted guys who make noise, like Eric Watts, Braden McGregor,
McKinley,
players like that.
Recently.
Yeah, McKinley's been lighting it up. So maybe this is like that surplus roster spot for him. Yeah. Because if there's any position where we know they would like to overload it, it's definitely the D line. So yeah, potentially it's that. So honestly, I would say it's probably one of those D linemen who benefits. Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because like Ferkser he was a tight end, right? I don't know if he's like a blocking tight end strictly. You do not want, like, people saying Ruckert, have him at H-back, have him at fullback. You do not want that. Not off the jump. Like, some plays, sure, movement in a lot of space, sure, but you don't want Ruckert leading against a middle linebacker at this point. Like, I'm not there with Ruckert. I think he's a blocker in space. So it's just interesting that the Jets, hey, you're going to be running a lot of power, counter, all this stuff. You think that result? I think they averaged like 8 snaps from fullback last year. I think the snap percentage actually goes up in terms of using that type of blocker. Now, maybe it's not a fullback and it's a tight end who they label a H-back, but you get what I'm saying. Like, as a lead blocker type of role. Whether it be from H-back or fullback, I think they're actually going to use that a little bit more this year. So is that a Ferkser? Like, have you done any research into him in terms of like where he's aligned in his blocking? Do you think he could overtake that role? Do you think that the Jets maybe go out and like it wasn't going to happen? And this is maybe for like me being a little bit of a football nerd, but like I remember the Jets looking into Kyle Juszczyk after Saleh came, and I was like, please get Kyle Juszczyk. Like, I love watching this guy play football. Like, is there some unheralded fullback out there in free agency land that we should write an article about on JetX that you could see, or what's going on with the fullback position with the Jets?
I would definitely have to look into the free agent fullbacks. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any, but I believe Ferkser has been more of a traditional tight end,
right? Yeah,
rather than him being like a fullback type. I know the name is familiar. I looked it up. He signed with the Jets in 2017 as a UDFA, so he was with us briefly. Which makes him now the second, not longest tenured, but behind Thomas Hennessy. Now he's one of the I guess, one of the few Jets who wore those previous uniforms, I guess you could say. But it doesn't seem like he's a fullback type. It seems like he's more of a traditional tight end. So it was interesting that they made that swap. Maybe they just have no plans for fullback this year, which it's usually been a part of Hackett's offenses across all of his stops. So I would be kind of surprised, but at the same time, it's, if you don't have a really good one, is it like a waste of a player on the field to just have a non-offensive threat if they're not a great blocker? So I could also see the justification for that. So curious to see how that plays out.
So I looked up free agent fullbacks, Nania. There's only 5 names that popped up on Spock Track. We got Nick Ballore, old Jet linebacker who's actually decent with the Seahawks for a couple of years, right? Kevin Smith, who transparently I have no idea who that is. Same. Another ex-Jet, Trayvon Wesco, listed at fullback. We got Jacob Johnson and Alex Arma. So I don't know, but we'll see what's going to happen with that.
Johnson was pretty decent with the Patriots. I remember him having some good blocks against the Jets. So
okay, we still have 9 days of coverage. Nothing going on today. Maybe we read a fullback article. Maybe Rick gets on that. I don't know if Rick is listening right now, but what's up? I'm gonna say hello to some people. Lloyd, Mark's in here. Let's see. Mark also asked, "Are you guys concerned about the wide receiver room?" Which I guess we can turn that into another topic. We'll kind of just keep going through it. I'm a little bit concerned. It's obviously based a lot on the health of Mike Williams, in my opinion. Now, with that being said, it seems like Mike Williams is a little bit ahead of schedule as per Aaron Rodgers. But if Mike Williams is not healthy, for the first couple of weeks, or he gets banged up, the games he is banged up, I am worried for the receiver core in those games. Now, like, you do have the benefit of having, Garrett Wilson, who's an absolute stud, and I'm not even going to say that he gets injured, but let's say that Mike Williams is down for a few games, and you have Lazard, Corley, Gibson. Like, I don't think that's great. So early in the offseason, I was a proponent of bringing in another receiver, whether that be like a DJ Chark or whoever we were talking about as like a receiver 4 or 5. It does seem like Lazard's been a little bit better in camp, but he still has some drops, that are going on. So it doesn't seem like he's really, really like truly rebounded, at least to the point where his hands are passable. His hands are still terrible. So in some aspects, I am, Mark, specifically when Mike Williams is not healthy. I don't think the depth is amazing at this point. I think it's more of like an okay receiver group. And it's more, and I'm saying okay only because Mike Williams, may be down for a few games. Now, when Mike Williams is healthy, like, I think we're fine at that point, right? Yeah, Garrett Wilson's a top 10 guy. Mike Williams, again, I don't think he's a top 10 receiver, top 15 receiver, anything like that. But in my mind, based on my football watching, and again, I haven't watched every single guy's contested catches, but he's a top 5 contested catch back shoulder guy in the NFL to me. And that's Rodgers' bread and butter. So with Conklin, with Breece, I think we're completely fine when healthy. I'm a little bit concerned if Mike Williams doesn't come back or he goes down. But with that being said, like, how many teams out there can say, hey, our number 2 goes down, we're still comfortable with all of our receivers, at that point. So what are your thoughts on the receiver room overall?
I think the biggest thing that you're lacking, and what you just said is an important point, because I think at wide receiver, especially because there's so much talent in the league, sometimes you get caught up in, thinking that you need to be like 3 deep, 4 deep with these great players. Like, it's hard to do that. It's not a lot of teams in the league that can say like that they trust their 3rd or 4th guy if someone goes down. So you do want to, somewhat keep it in check, keep it realistic in terms of how much talent you could really have at that one position. But I think what the Jets do lack is a high floor kind of backup, because you look at these backups that they have beyond Garrett and Mike Williams, and there's a lot of upside because, Corley, 3rd round pick, very tantalizing skill set with his yak. And as you showed, he has a lot more than that as well. Gibson,
he made that sideline catch too. The other day. He beat the guy in the corner for a touchdown.
Big time, like, vertical highlights the last couple of days. So you have him, who's a rookie, and he has plenty of upside.
Who would have predicted, Nania? Who would have predicted him having some vertical catches? I don't know. There's people out there.
No one was talking about it. Definitely not. No one on this channel. That's for sure. But
no, nobody.
Yeah. So you have him. You have Gibson, 2nd-year player, young. Like, he's shown his flashes, and especially in camp, it seems like that they've liked him enough to put him high enough on the depth chart. Then you have Lazard, who, for a few years in Green Bay, like, he scored a lot of red zone touchdowns, and he was a solid 3rd, 4th type of guy. So like you have these guys who like there's hope there, but then there's a low floor with them too. Like Corley being a 3rd-round rookie, like he could really struggle. And Gibson last year was undrafted and didn't do a whole lot when he played. And we know how low Lazard's floor is based on last year. So all 3 of these guys have, there's upside, but the floor is very low. Like any one of these guys could start a game and catch 0 passes for you. So I would like them to see them get like a high floor type of backup. Like I think Hunter Renfrow is a guy who kind of fits that. Like there's not a lot of exciting potential with him at this point, but you're okay with that because you just want someone who could come in and like if you just need him to win a slant on 3rd and 5 and just catch that ball, that's a guy you can trust to do it. Whereas, some of these other guys I have, I don't know if you're going to catch an easy pass because there's a floor with some of these players. So I think that is what they lack. But at the same time, like you said, as long as Mike Williams is out there and they're fully healthy with Garrett Wilson, then it's hard to ask for much better than that. But I think they could use more security with the backups.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like if they were to bring in like some guy who's like a 4th or a 5th guy, I would be for it, but I don't think they're going to at this point. But yeah, good reports from Corley at this point. At least recently in camp, that's a good sign. Obviously, he's getting a little bit more involved with the special teams. It seems like they're using him in some packages, some end arounds, which we knew was how they're going to use him. But it's nice to see him get involved. Obviously, Garrett Wilson had like 3 touchdowns the other day. He's dominating. I don't know if I'm on an island here. I don't know if you watched the Alan Lazard press conference where he was like held accountable for some of the things he did last year. And maybe it's just because I don't like Lazard, and maybe it's because of what I do and like reading people. I think Lazard thinks he's better than he actually is. Like the way he talks, like, oh yeah, if I could do special teams, I got to be an example for the other guys. It's like, dude, you like, and I don't want to be like this guy, but you kind of suck. Like, who are you to say like, oh, even if I could do special teams? And like, he would talk about like stuff like he had the drop pass that was picked off in practice by Chuck Clark, and he mentioned the pass. He's like, oh, the pass got tipped. Like, not that I dropped it, the pass got tipped. And then he said something else that I like a little flag went off my head. It was something about like it was something about like the offense messing up or something like that, instead of like, no, I kind of sucked. I watched that interview, and again, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just an asshole, and I transparently, I know I'm a little bit of an asshole, but I wanted him to be more accountable than he was. Like, I did not feel like Lazard was really like, I wanted him to be like, hey, I sucked last year. I gave up on the team. Like, he was throwing out excuses like, oh, my quarterback went down. Like, oh, boo-hoo, your quarterback went down. If you're making fucking $11 million a year, like, try, block, be present in meetings. Like, what? So Garrett Wilson was supposed to just quit? Like, who are you to quit? So Lazard's interview, like, I was not thrilled. Like, and again, I think I'm the only one, because I think people on Twitter are like, oh, he took accountability. I watched him like, shut up, dude. Like, I don't like Lazard at all. Am I crazy for that interview kind of turning me even off more to him?
I think I only saw snippets of it, but I'm glad to hear you like break it down in that way, because I think a lot of people, and like, to be transparent, like, I'm not a huge press conference watcher. I don't watch the entirety of every single interview, but I do think that there's so a thing that we do now where, the main quotes will get shared and we kind of just go off of those. But when you really watch an interview and you can kind of read the body language and listen to the tone, I think you could take a lot more out of taking it in that way versus just like, here's the main quote. So I think there's a lot more to take out. And then there are just like important things that get said. Like, Rivka did an article earlier today about Rodgers, and like his press conferences have a lot of really interesting quotes where he shows insight on his teammates, how he communicates with them, coaches them up, and just his like philosophies on the game and things like that. And those will never make the headlines. You just see like the few main quotes get shared. Exactly. So I think there is a lot of context and things lost by not watching them. But like, I saw one that was the opposite of what you're saying with Lazard, like Javon Kinlaw's press conference. This is a guy who, you and I have both been critical of that signing, but he comes out, and I know you do have some reservations about maybe the validity of how many pounds that he added, which is another thing.
There is no way you can gain 35 pounds of muscle in an offseason. There's no way. Like, some of it has to be fat. It's literally impossible. Without steroids, you cannot gain 35 pounds of muscle in 3 months. It's just, there's no way.
Yeah. So that number is interesting. I'm curious what he means by that. But it was cool. Like, he was very transparent about it. He said he thought he was getting moved by double teams a lot last year, and that as soon as the season was over, he wanted to work on that. And it seems like he did put in the work to do it. So that's the type of thing that I like to hear from a player is like, yeah, you're supposed to be confident, but you shouldn't take it to a delusional level. You should be able to self-evaluate yourself and, be able to identify, here's what I'm not great at, so I can get closer to being the player that I think I'm capable of being. So I like to hear that from Kinlaw. It definitely raised his stock for me. And with Lazard, it would be cooler for him to just kind of be like, that was awful. I can be better than that. I will be better than that, period.
Yeah, like he was kind of putting it from the aspect like, hey, it was kind of all of us. Rodgers went down. I was bad about try to go into it without my opinion in there, like baked into your head. And if you have 10 minutes today, watch it. And then I want you to hit me on Slack and like, yeah, I got a similar vibe because like you're making $11 million. Like he should be cooking Kinlaw's 6 chicken breasts for lunch if that's what the Jets asked him to do. Like nothing should be below him based on how shitty he was last year. And like he gave up. It's not like, oh, I just my mental wasn't good. If he said like, hey, I was thrown off mentally because Rodgers wasn't there, I was getting used to a new quarterback. Okay, fine. But you quit, dude. Like you quit. So just again, I don't like him. And the interview, I think he thinks he's better than he is. I think he's dope. Like I don't like him at all. But nonetheless, yeah, Kinlaw, listen, if he could have 90% of the explosion that he had at 305 pounds, and now he's going to be playing at 330 pounds, like, okay, now we're talking, because with him with more weight, I don't know how you do stop him, because even with poor technique that big, it doesn't matter because he's a absolute freak, and now he's gonna be bigger than guys and more explosive than guys. So hey, if he can carry again 90% of that athleticism into 330, then I think we might be looking at a season like holy shit. Which again, he could have a dominant season, and I think his ceiling, and I've said this from the jump, I think his ceiling is higher than a guy like Quentin Jefferson because of the athleticism he has. All I'm saying is, and all you're saying is, and all Rivka's saying, and all everybody, whoever else has wrote about it on the website who watched him, is at the time of the signing, I liked Quentin Jefferson's Seahawk film better than Kinlaw's 49er film. I'm not saying that he has a lower ceiling or anything like that than a Quentin Jefferson, but based on the time of the signing, I liked Jefferson's film more. But you see that interview, homeless, all this stuff, adding 30 pounds. Like, I am rooting for Kinlaw. I think he could be a great player next to Q. Now, would I anticipate that? Maybe not. But adding 30 pounds I would say that's a stock up more than stock down for Kinlaw for me, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And like we hear about these transformations a lot, and sometimes it translates, sometimes it doesn't. But in this case, I think it's I like it because it applies specifically to what our concerns were. It really puts him on the path to being the most complete version of himself, because like you said, the athleticism's there, but can you hold your ground a little bit better and be, a two-way force versus someone who's just athletic. So I think it very much fits what we want to see from him.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to keep running through the chat, and then we'll get into the stacking the AFC East. I have like a couple more topics I want to get into. I'm sure we'll naturally get into it in the chat. Say hello to Tony. The GM is in here. Paul's in here. This is our year. Don't tell my family I said that, which I don't know. I don't know why that would necessarily matter. Are y'all not worried about Nathaniel Hackett? Which we can get into this too, actually, now, I guess, a little bit. Yes, if Rodgers goes down, I'm worried. Would I like a better OC in there to work with Rodgers? Sure. But I don't know who said it recently, Nania, but somebody was like, hey, Rodgers comes to the line. I think maybe it was Conklin in an interview. He's like, he changes like 60, 70% of the plays at the line. So Hackett basically makes recommendations, and Rodgers, like, more than half the time, is like, no, we're not doing that. So Rodgers is the OC. I'm much more worried about Nathaniel Hackett if Tyrod Taylor comes into the game. So yeah, overall, I would like a different OC when Rodgers is out there. I'm not concerned about it. And then we'll parlay that into him saying, or him talking about the fact, Titman didn't have any snapping problems last year. I don't know if you knew that, but he did not have any snapping problems last year. So, but we'll get into that. We'll hold that off until we'll get into that. But Hackett, how worried should we be?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Like, it's definitely a concern to me. I don't think it should be written off even when Rodgers is playing, because he's still essential in game planning, opening script, adjustments. Like, he's still going to play a role in all of that. So, and, you know, we'll get into that quote, but when he says things like that, it makes you question how much expertise is he bringing to the table in all of those aspects that I just mentioned. So I'm definitely still concerned about it, and it could have been and probably should have been upgraded. But at the same time, because of what you said, like, if Rodgers is going to change that much at the line, it's not going to have the greatest impact, or as much as it would on pretty much any other quarterback in the league right now, because of his ability to make changes at the line. So right now, it's not to the point where it diminishes my optimism about this team. I don't want to say at all, but definitely not significantly. But it's not ideal. But yeah, I don't think it affects my optimism to a high level right now.
Yeah. No. Now, getting into some more chats. So it's up to Art. Dano is in here. Dan Cohen's retiring. Yeah, Art's been, I guess, off of Twitter or just not on streaming and stuff like that. Eagle Thing brought this up, which I was going to talk about too. He says, I don't know if you guys saw Hard Knocks where the Jets called up about wanting to trade up for 6 to 6 for Rome Odunze. Interesting. The Jets had Odunze. So the thing is, and Eagle, tell me if I'm wrong here, I didn't see anybody saying it was necessarily Odunze over Neighbors. I think people are saying Odunze over Neighbors because Neighbors was never really realistic. And people talked about the Jets trending up to 9 with the Bears, right, for Odunze. They didn't want to trade up. Or maybe it was 8 or whatever, wherever the Bears were. So I don't think it was locked in stone that it was Neighbors over Odunze. I personally definitely had Neighbors over Odunze, but this was exactly my mindset actually going to the draft time though. I was saying, hey, if you can trade up for Neighbors or Odunze, do that. If not, stick and pick, you know, an offensive lineman at 10 or maybe Bowers at that point. But the Jets were on a similar path or similar plane. I don't know if you were in that boat too, Nania, like trade up for a receiver type of talk. I know I definitely was.
I think so.
Jets tried
I ended up there. I changed it a lot, but I think by the time the draft was here, it was like, you know, see if you can trade up for the big time weapon. If not, then offensive line.
Yeah, Eagle, tell me if I'm wrong though. I didn't see anything. It was definitely. I think people were saying Odunze because they wanted Odunze at 9. But if Neighbors was on the board, then they might have wanted Neighbors. I personally like Neighbors over Odunze, even though Odunze, based on what I've heard and saw interviews, all that stuff, he seems like more of like a jet type of player than a Neighbors. Who again, it's like crazy that, you know, I don't know if you saw the videos, Nania, but you have Neighbors in a strip club throwing like $100 bills and all this stuff. There's really not much about it. If that was Sauce Gardner in his first year, or if that was Olu Fashanu or, you know, Fashanu or whatever, right now that would have got a lot more, you know, headline. But nonetheless, it's just how the Jets are covered. But speaking of offensive lineman and Olu a little bit, he had some good reviews out of camp, which is obviously great. You know, he's getting a lot of work with the first team when Tyron Smith is out. And then you have the whole Titman thing. Thoughts about Titman, Nathaniel Hackett not knowing that he's snapping the ball high. Does he just not know that we have replay? Does he just not know? Does he think that people don't know what they're talking about? Does he not know what he's talking about? Because Titman had a problem snapping the ball last year. And it wasn't like, hey, he threw the ball over his head 1,000 times like Spencer Long or Xavier Newman or whatever it might have been. But there was a lot of times where Zach Wilson, whoever, was catching the ball, you know, all the way out here because of Titman. And now it's happening again in camp. It's been happening for multiple days. So it's easy for people to say, hey, it's just the yips, he'll get over it. Some people don't necessarily get over the yips, like, you know, because it keeps happening. It builds up in his mind. Okay, game 1, I can't fuck this up. The first shotgun snap of the game. It's the playoffs. Like, it's a little bit concerning. I'm not turning up the panic meter to 100, but I'm a little bit concerned with Titman snapping at this point because it's been an issue.
Yeah, it was definitely something that coming out of last year was one of my main concerns with him. I mean, it goes back to the preseason last year, the Hall of Fame game, the Panthers game. Like, again, like there was nothing blatant that would make people remember it because there was never any like errant snaps. But like clearly if you're watching the game, and sometimes it is easier to see this from like the end zone angle of the all 22 than it looks on the broadcast. But, you know, even on broadcast, you could see like a lot of them. Like Tim Boyle, who was like 6'5", even he was jumping for some snaps. So like it was a thing. And I think in the regular season, he got better, but it still continued. And then all the way at the end of the season, there was the Commanders game where it did lead to a turnover at one point. So yeah, coming out of last season, I did want to see him get a lot better with it. And it was funny because the same day where that started popping up, whatever that was, 2 or 3 days ago, right before that practice, I asked Robbie and like the other people at Jet X who have been in practice. I was like, how has Titman snapping been? Because I didn't hear anyone talking about it. And then he had that big day with some of the notable bad snaps.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's not a new issue. And, yeah, with the Hackett thing, I did a whole article on it. But it is concerning to me because, there's only a few different, explanations for why Hackett would say it was never an issue. Number one is he's just, straight up lying. And if he's doing it for the sake of like showing that he's confident, like that he's not bothered, that he thinks it's going to get figured out, that's fine. But we can all watch. Like, there's no need to make something up when you could just say, look, similar to Lazard, like it's not hard to say this has been an issue, but he's working on it. We trust him. He's going to get this figured out. We're not worried. You don't have to just make something up that we can all see. So there's either that, or did he just forget, or did he actually not think it's a problem when it actually was? If that's the case, then that's pretty concerning, because it's not the first time he's done something like this. There was in January when he said he was surprised that Breece Hall was as good a receiver as he was, even though we all saw in 2022 that he has plenty of receiving potential, and he had great receiving production in his rookie season. So it would not be the first time that Hackett publicly showed, I don't really know as much about my own player as I should. So I don't want to accuse him of that, because I'm sure he watches plenty of film. I'm sure he knows, even if he struggles as an OC, it seems disingenuous to suggest that he doesn't watch the team, but that is the impression he gives off by saying that. So you would just like him to be more careful with his words, I guess. I mean, what do you make of it?
Yeah, again, one or two things. You're either lying or doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's concerning because I don't think he necessarily knows what he's talking about, right? Parsons is fast last year. Breece Hall can catch. Titman doesn't have problems snapping. So, and again, this is last year, I've lost respect for, and I don't think like these NFL guys are like some elitist. I think a lot of them are really, really smart. Like I do, like scheme, all that stuff, like some of them, but again, Breece Hall is not Sauce Gardner's not a top 10 quarterback. Or cornerback from an evaluator. Like there's just been a lot of things that come out. I'm like, do these people know what they're talking about? I don't know. Chicken Jenkins says, how is the truck doing, Joe? You get the train. Yeah, I got it back. And then I realized that they left big scratches from the tow truck. So it's the scratches got fixed. I can actually pick it up now, but I have to pick it up tomorrow. So yeah, truck's back. He says, would you go back to your old car in order for the Jets to get a Super Bowl? Yeah. I would need parameters here. Like, can I never get a nice truck for the rest of my life? But in general, like my immediate answer is, of course, like go back to it's not like I drove like a shit, but I drove a 2017 Ford Fusion for 7 years. So yes. Johnny Boy says, with Cohen retiring, does that save Brownlee as a roster spot? We kind of talked about it before. I think it's probably more towards like a tight end or maybe like a D end. If I had to bet right now, I don't think Brownlee makes the roster. And maybe maybe the coaches saw more than him from him in practice than I did or anything like that. But he had one catch last year that I think elevated his stock with Jets fans, like we do all the time. But I didn't see anything impressive past that in preseason, in the regular season, anything like that. So I don't think Brownlee's going to make the roster. Thoughts on Brownlee? Am I too down on Brownlee? Like what else has he done minus that one catch?
I was going to say I don't remember another notable moment outside of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure.
DA is saying in the West Coast offense, the fullback is interchangeable with the H-back, which I don't necessarily agree with because they line up in different spots. I could see multiple players, Allen, Davis, Ruckert, even. You do not want Allen, Davis, Ruckert, or Corley leading on a power run. They're not good enough blockers. Like they could be blockers in space. They can take out a safety. They can take out a corner. You do not want Allen, Davis, Ruckert, or Corley blocking a linebacker or anything like that, or wham blocking as an H-back. Are you wham blocking a 300-pound defensive tackle with Ruckert? Like I don't see it happening. So VR Jake fumbled your show day. I don't know. I have no idea what that means necessarily, but my show day it's just different every week, Jay Quest. I don't know if this is, I think I've seen you here before, but I work 4 to 12 in like rotating schedule. So I can't lock it down to one day. So whoever fumbled it,
you ever see some of these, this is random, but you ever see some of these headlines that they write about the Jets? Like I just searched Nick Bawden. Here's some of the headlines that came up. Jets abruptly cut ties with starter after practice. New York Jets release fan favorite fullback.
That was created when, now or recently?
When he got cut, these were the headlines.
What site did that?
Heavy.com and Sports Illustrated.
Heavy.com and Sports and fan favorite Nick Bawden after practice. Like did that indicate that implies
who in the chat has a Nick Bawden jersey? Everyone,
yeah, like did he have a bad pictures. He had a bad practice and then they cut him because of the bad practice. Like that indicates like, hey, he had some type of bad practice and that's why he was cut. It's like, did he technically get cut after practice, but did he even practice? Okay. Sports Illustrated. What does the Fox say? Okay. I'm going to keep going down. Did Bawden just get cut? He got cut yesterday, right? Yes. Fursker was a Titan owned by Keith Carter. Yeah. He was with them for years as Keith Carter was there, which I should have mentioned, but John Connor's only 37. I'll take John Connor. I like John Connor. We do have Malik Taylor. I can see if I had to bet right now, Brownlee versus Malik Taylor to make the roster, I'd probably take Malik Taylor over Brownlee. But then again, Malik Taylor wasn't on the roster last year and Brownlee was. But I don't know if that was because of injury or not. But let's see. OG Jets fan, this is our year. Joe, is Kyle going to join you again? I miss him. Sad to see the Jets broke his soul. Dude's more busted than the... Maybe eventually if Kyle's schedule gets loosened up and he can actually watch the Jets. So Kyle still watches the Jets and all this stuff. Kyle's thing is Kyle is so I don't know how to describe it. Like Kyle's so dedicated that if he's not 100% in to the Jets, he will not watch this or he won't do the show because he feel like he's not doing a service to Jets X Factor. I said to Nania before, Kyle still probably knows 90% more than any Jets person out there, but because it's 90, not 100, he will not do it. So we'll see. Get the likes up. Love to see Corley's flashing in camp. Okay, I'm just running through so we can get to the roster stuff. Lazard's full gold. Stick to your soccer, you quitter. Yeah, I'm not a big Lazard guy either.
He did say he dropped the soccer ball though, right? I saw that.
Yeah, he did. Again, the interview was not great. How'd you add 35? That's funny, Daniel. More like 10 in like 4 months, but not 30, not 35. Love Javon Kinlaw's transparency. Yeah. Okay, I'm just rolling through here. So while I'm rolling through the chat a little bit and just looking for some relevant topics before we get into the sack in the AFC East, another little interesting thing that came out was Hall on some of these plays being the first read. I think he had like a touchdown or two in the red zone passing the ball. You're assuming it's most likely like wheel routes, picks, and stuff like that. But like there were situations last year, and I think we talked about this recently, where he was lined up versus a linebacker. I think in the Eagles game, like burned him, ball wasn't there. So I see it more being like, hey, picks. You know, he breaks into the flat real quick. You try to get him on some screens or some, again, just easy opportunities for some extra yardage. You know, wheel routes. I could see some situations with him versus linebackers, but I think it's a great thing to take advantage of him because he's a mismatch. Put him versus most linebackers in this league, and I'm going to take Breece Hall in a one-on-one situation versus those guys, whether it be in the open field, if you're going to dump the ball into the flat with him, that linebacker's like first to flat, he matches him, whatever it is, give him that opportunity. Or, again, linebacker and Breece Hall in a vertical. Like, I'll take that. So I love seeing Breece Hall being the first read in some of these practices. Yeah,
like even after his rookie year, I remember seeing some good routes from him that I thought they could capitalize on. And in a lot of good teams, good offenses in the NFL, having a good receiving running back is a part of it, whether it's, you know, McCaffrey in San Francisco, in the peak Kamara days with the Saints. That was such a massive part of what they did. So, like, there's a lot of potential. And to even go way back to Marshall Faulk with the Rams, like it could be an LT with the Chargers. Like, it could be a huge part of an elite passing attack to have a running back who could catch the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. DA says, question, what do you guys think of Leaky Fotu in camp so far? The thing I'll say, and I talked about this with Sabo last week, there's really not much you could take away from interior defensive linemen. You know, even trench play in general, like that's the position I take the least from in camp. Like I think it's more of like a glorified 7-on-7 type. Sometimes you look at corners, safeties, receivers, you know, some linebacker type stuff, but like evaluating trench play, evaluating the running game, and non-game action is nearly impossible. And for a guy who hasn't been to camp and hasn't really seen much about Fotu, I don't want to say, something great that I, you know, I've seen more positive from him than negative. So I think his stock is up, but don't take much from trench play, in camp.
Yeah, like I see, like I'm glad to hear about some of the running backs doing well, but I'll see a highlight and they're like Breece Hall explodes, and he's just like, guys are just reaching their arms out, not even trying to tackle him. I'm like, all right, it's like, does it really matter? And like, this is another thing for me. I went to that joint practice in Spartanburg against the Panthers last year, and I was on the sideline with the media credentials for that. And after experiencing that, it's definitely given me a new perspective of how much
hard it is to evaluate that.
Yeah, like how hard it is to evaluate this. I think it's strange how definitively a lot of the reporters talk about it when like that sideline perspective sucks. You can't see anything, like especially like you just said, like you can't see what the guard is doing against the 3-tech. Like you can't, even if you want to look at the receiver on the opposite side, like that's blocked. Like it's very hard to see anything. And even if you were to do it, you can only focus on one thing at a time. Then on top of that, there's no replay. You can't record it. So you're just going off your memory of watching it one time. Imagine if all your film reviews were just based off of you watch the game once through and it's just recalling based on memory. So it's a bad perspective. You can't replay it. And, and it also goes so fast. Like I remember I was trying to like tweet some of this stuff out. It's like, oh, I'm at practice. This is my chance to like go viral with, what's going on in practice. But like when I found myself doing that, you'd be at the end of typing one thing, and then the next play is starting up and you don't know who subbed in, who rotated out, what formation they're in. And it's just snapping as soon as you're done with the last one. So like, how do you evaluate all this stuff and say things so definitively? And the only guy I've seen who actually acknowledges some of these obstacles is Robbie. He's the only guy who says, like, based on what I saw, or I wasn't totally sure, or from my view, or I think, because like these, you should be using these terms because this is not definitive stuff from the way that you're watching it. But I feel like most of the reports are very like, this happened, I'm telling you this, but you don't really know that much. So I don't know. It's after having that experience personally, that definitely made it clear for me, like, oh, this is what we're getting all the information from. I don't know if I 100% trust that.
Exactly. And I'm not even calling out names here because I saw it from multiple people, but like people who I know don't watch film or like can't necessarily break it down. It's like, oh, Corley's footwork is so much better. It's like footwork. You're talking about you're seeing footwork from 50 yards away, and tell me do you even know what good footwork is? Like, what are you saying? Good footwork from these guys. And I've seen multiple beat reports. Oh, his footwork looks better. Okay, by all means, sure. But I'm not even a grain of salt. That's nothing. That's an absolute nothing burger to me. He's saying his footwork is better. But we have some Corley Rookie of the Year. John, I would not jump on that just because the targets are going to go to Breece. It goes to quarterbacks, right? So it's most likely going to be Caleb or Jaden Daniels or one of these guys. And then you have guys like, Marvin Harrison, who's going to be like the number one for his team. Marvin Harrison has a much better chance. Corley, something really bad would have to happen to Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall for that to even be a possibility. I severely doubt Corley would be in that running, but here we are. Fursker has barely lined up at fullback in his career, if I recall correctly. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the fullback thing. Okay, let's see. Salah should be calling plays for the twos on offense, and if Tyrod comes in the game, Salah should be calling plays. He's the head coach. You're talking about for the offense too? Let's see. Daniel Murphy, what's up? Bears pick 9. Okay, I'm catching up here. McGovern, why not bring him in? I'm 100% for that, right? Like, I'm not comfortable with Xavier Newman, Jake Hansen, anything like that. We've talked about it for months. Bring McGovern back. He's probably waiting for somebody to get injured in another camp and hope he gets a little bit more money. But I think if he doesn't get the opportunity to go in because somebody's injured, I'm thinking he ends up back with the Jets. I'm not comfortable with their interior offensive lineman depth right now, which I'm sure you're not.
Yeah, no, that is one thing I think they should have paid a little more attention to, and still could. So, yeah, I could stand for some improvement there.
Mm-hmm. So another question from DA says, if Mike Williams is slower in recovery and the other wide receivers don't do great, would kicking the tires on Hunter Renfrow? Nania just mentioned this. It's kind of hard. Like his fall off came out of nowhere. So I don't know if it's an injury thing or whatever it may be. Some guys just drop off the face of the earth to get an injury. But yeah, I don't think kicking the tires on anybody is a bad idea. So Ruckert had a huge block that sprung Breece on Monday Night Football, right? Yes, sure, for sure. But with that being said, that was one block, and I could show you again, like, and he says, I think Ruckert has the capability to have a huge decleater type block. Why can't he? Sorry, Joe, disagree here. So, you're kind of misconstruing what I'm saying here, or kind of like taking things out of context. I never said that Ruckert does not have the capability to be a huge decleater type of block, because I've said in the past that that's what Ruckert does. He has a huge decleating block, and then the next time he completely whiffs because he plays too far over his toes. My problem with Ruckert is he's way too volatile. Really, really good block, really, really bad whiff. And there's a film review out there to prove that, John. So if you want to, I could pull up the plays of him completely whiffing blocks on as well. So I have plays of him highlight blocks. And that block, I believe, was more in space in the Bills game. I don't think it was necessarily like a lead block. I could be wrong. But that's the problem. It's a decleater and then a complete whiff. So he has the capability to, but down by down basis, blocking a linebacker as a fullback, I don't think that should be his role unless he learns how to slow down his feet. I think he has a capability to do it, but he gets way too over his toes. If he's learning that this year, and that's why they got rid of Bawden, then okay. But I'm not going to sign up for Ruckert being my fullback right now. So yeah, that's not what I'm saying. I never said he cannot decleat a guy, because he clearly can. Will Reddick make it to camp and settle this debacle? As I'm continuing to go through the chat, and we're have to do a little bit more of a like lightning round, stacking the AFCs, which is fine. But football is back. The chat is filling up, which I love. Where are you at with Reddick? Are you surprised? Because he's almost lost, I believe, almost $1 million to this point right now. So where do you stand on him?
I think it'll be resolved soon. I mean, I'm a little surprised because I thought a few days ago it was kind of building up to it. Because, he is losing a lot of money. But I think it'll be resolved soon, and he'll have like a revised 1-year deal, more guarantees, maybe incentives change a little bit. I do not see them extending him at this time, but I think it'll be resolved soon.
I think they add some. They have some guaranteed. It's guaranteed money. They throw some incentives onto there, give him a few $1 million. But again, I said it last week. I don't think that the part of the value of trading for him was that he's on such a low contract. I think their idea was to trade for him, 3rd round pick. You get a 4th round pick comp the next year. Yep. And that was the trade. You traded a 4th round. You traded down from 3rd round to the 4th round the next year for 1 year of Reddick on a cheap contract. So you don't just give him $10 million, you give him $10 million. Hey, attaboy. It's like, no, you're decreasing the value of what you traded for in that aspect. So I don't think they just give him money to give him money. I see this being a thing where I think he has to blink first, because he has to. Now the Jets do need him as well, but he has to play. Like there's no, he's 29 years old. Like he got to put up a good season. So the people were like out there, oh, well, he's going to come back and he's not going to be motivated. Well, then he's not going to get money. Like he's going to play motivated because he wants to get sacks. He wants to make that money. But Hawk says, bro, I was watching grainy clips from a shaking vertical cell phone recording on TikTok, and Carter Warren's hand placement has drastically improved. It's so true though. Like this guy's footwork is better. His hand placement's better. It's like, I don't trust you in a film review where you could slow it down frame by frame to know what you're talking about. But now on the sideline, 50 yards away with a bunch of 300-pound behemoths moving around, now you know about hand placement and footwork. It's like, okay, fine. So a lot of, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, but I'm just trying to advise people like, hey, let's not buy into beat reporters, stock reports about hand placement and footwork, because when do you trust their opinion about hand placement and footwork? Or like, how do you value that? I don't. How do you value their film watching? I don't know.
Right.
Sorry, I'm late.
I mean, I think like the only thing you could kind of put stock into in training camp is just like notice the overall trends, like who's moving up the depth chart or who's heavily involved in the offense, like things like that. That's like, okay, we could see what the coaching staff thinks of the players, how they're reacting to what has generally been happening as the days stack up. But like analysis like that just doesn't really mean anything to me. No,
like literally nothing. Any money toward Reddick in terms of like guaranteed stuff? They are not. Slug Eye, I'm sorry. Let's see. Kinlaw's role next to Williams. Yeah, he'll be next to Quentin Williams. We had a Dolphins fan in here who lasted for 5 seconds and I banned him. So has to work on his route running. Yeah. Overall, I would say. The only other thing from camp, I would say, Nania, was that Clark was standing out recent days. He's playing well, which is good to hear. Stiggers has been pretty good, and then JBC is making some plays. Is there anything in camp that you want to mention that you've heard, or should we move on to the stacking the AFC East?
Yeah, I think it's been cool to hear like some of those young DBs playing pretty well. It just seems like in general their defensive coaching and player development is really solid, especially in the. I was gonna say especially in the secondary, but up front they do it as well. So just in general, the defensive coaching and player development seems pretty solid, and it looks like that's going to continue. But it's been cool to see Corley flash some of the big time catches recently. The route running is definitely going to be big for him to get on the field and make those catches consistently in the game. But to see him doing that, it's it shows that he is more than just the gadget guy. And even if that is probably his best role to start out, it's still good to see those flashes of potential that he could be more than that.
Keenan Allen could be available. Well, I look at his contract, but the Bears just traded for him or got him, right? So why would they get rid of him after half a year? And it's like, if you're going to say that, hey, he could be available because the Bears are bad and they want to trade him, I get that point of view, but I'm sure they're also having him there to kind of not fast forward, but to assist in Caleb Williams' development, right? Like, you don't want to suck and then take away one of his best receivers, and he's having to throw it to a worse guy. And now Caleb Williams' development is worse off. Like, sometimes people will bring in these veterans knowing the team's going to suck, but they don't want to fuck up their quarterback for lack of a better term. Sorry for the cursing, but like, I don't think it's a thing where, hey, it's like a vet roster, vet quarterback. Who cares? They brought him in most likely to, again, help with Caleb Williams. So I would probably doubt that he gets traded. Maybe if they really, really suck and Keenan Allen's not performing great, then maybe it's a possibility. But I would say it's less likely than not for Keenan Allen. Last year, I get that, Scott. It's more so, do you want to take a good receiver away from development or developing quarterback in his first year? I would say probably not. Or I would bet quite a bit, probably not. But just being honest, Joe, okay. I appreciate that. What would you do if and when the Jets win the Super Bowl? I'm not going, Disney, maybe, probably not Disney. I'm just going to really, really enjoy it. Like, I'm going to enjoy watching film of it. And like, I'm going to break down every single play at that point, right? Like, you have to do a 135 play review, 6 hour review of the Jets Super Bowl, probably. So I would say realistically, I probably break down every single play. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go on vacation necessarily.
Halftime show, sideline interviews.
I've been having vacation FOMO. I know this is like a first world problem for sure, but since my little guy has been born and since she's been pregnant, I was going to Italy and Turks and Caicos and all these places, and now I haven't been outside of like my county, so it's been a little bit disappointing. I saw somebody asking if there's going to be a film review. I think Eagle on Ferkser. We have to figure out our film review tactics. If I had my old account back, then yeah, probably. But right now we're kind of in a gray area, Nania, with the film stuff. So I'm not doing Ferkser. I'm not doing it right now. Tack McKinley, good. Tack McKinley media hype, is he good? Hard to know because we're not there. Based on what I've seen, the explosion, the snap timing looks there, and that's something you can definitely evaluate from videos. So okay, didn't know. Yeah, Scott, I don't think it's a non-possibility. I don't think you just take away a good receiver. Again, it's possible. Happiest tears. Yeah, I would. If the Jets win the Super Bowl, I'm most likely going to cry. Like, no Diddy here. But yes, I'm probably gonna cry. What's up, Peeves? What's up, Greg? Okay, so let's get into the Nani. If you want to share your screen, we go to about 40 minutes to go through some of the position groups. The chat will be. I'll throw some chats onto the screen here, but we're mostly going to be doing the talking about the AFC East. But Bears would be stupid not to trade Allen if they can get, again, like Madden type stuff. It's not Madden type stuff, Scott. I'm not saying that about you, but like if having Keenan Allen enhances your development to Caleb Williams, why get rid of him for a 5th round pick or a 4th round pick? Like if it's going to progress him, then you keep him. I think it's I don't know. I don't think it's gonna happen. You have the AFC lads all pulled up. If you could Share it. Okay, perfect. So, oh wow. How'd you do? Okay, so you have a different system.
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't know
this
you could
is
even do
by
that.
position, so it just shows this is quarterback. So you would pick something else, and then it would show every team for that
Oh
position.
wow. Okay. Johnny boy, do we bring McGovern back? I'm hoping so. I don't. If I had to bet right now, I would venture to guess not, but I'm really hoping they do. Our roster could be the best in the AFC East. Yes, that's what we're gonna do now. That's what we're gonna figure out. I'm gonna track the scores of all of this. QB. Okay, so we can have some quick discussions here, right? Obviously, the Pats are in fourth, which in this instance, you want the least points. At the end of this, we want the least points. The Pats are going to easily be at 4, right? How can I'm trying to think of how I could track. I'll just do cube. How do I track this?
I guess just rank them at every position and just add up the points.
Yeah. I gotta figure out how to formulate that on my phone a little bit. Dolphins, Bills. Okay, we'll select this.
I could try to do it.
I got it.
All right.
Are you gonna be able to track it while you're doing all this? Yeah.
I mean, you could do it if you got it.
I'll do it. I got it.
All right.
I'll just add up the points at the end. I'm not going to put like the actual positions, but I'll just put the point totals at first. So the Pats, their first number is going to be 4, right? They have the worst quarterback room in the AFC East. We're not really gonna.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think there's much discussion there, right? Even though Jacoby Brissett did carve up the Jets a little bit with the Browns, he carved them up a little bit with the.
He did. He is a Jets killer.
Yeah, so hopefully, I don't think he's going to necessarily beat us in week 3, but I don't love him starting, but it is what it is. Nania, I'll let you go with 3. Who do you think is I'm assuming we're going to say Tua here, right? With a third quarterback in the AFC East. This is for this year, by the way.
Yeah. I thought about it a little bit, but yeah, especially like I think the interesting aspect of this is more so for Jets versus Bills, but I think having Tyrod versus Trubisky is something that gives the Jets points. But yeah, I think Miami third, right?
Yeah. It's again like long term. I get people saying Tua over Rodgers. I think Tua is more of a product of the system. I think he's a good quarterback who could be elite at times because he's a product of the system, including really good receivers and rub routes and crossing routes and all the things that they do, motion. And having 2 elite fast guys. So I think he's a good quarterback who's elevated by his system. I'm not saying he's a bad player or anything like that, but I would take Rodgers this year on the Jets over Tua. So I'm going to put the Dolphins at 3. I think we could argue for Rodgers over Allen. Realistically, though, we're going to put Allen at 1 and Rodgers at 2, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Mm-hmm. Being a father changes everything. It changes travel. I'm not going to travel with a 6-month-old baby and be taking care of him while I could be outside and stuff. But he's not going to be a New England fan. But we'll be going on a lot of vacation just when he's older. Jets will come out like world beaters. Rodgers is the second best quarterback behind only Mahomes. I get that argument, Sluggo, and I said it last week. Like I think Rodgers could be the second best quarterback in the NFL this year. Like there's an avenue for that happening. I'm not banking on it. It could happen. Like I think that's his ceiling. And Allen is very inconsistent. Now he doesn't have Diggs and all this stuff. So I'm not saying that Allen is a slam dunk over Rodgers, but we're just trying to be somewhat realistic. If we could take Allen over Rodgers this year, we would. But I'm not saying in any world that Allen's going to always be better than Rodgers. I could see Allen being, however you quantify it, the 4th best quarterback this year, and Rodgers being the 2nd. But we'll be favorable to the Jets in other spots, I'm sure. So we'll give the Bills number 1, right?
Yeah. Running back.
Go to running back next. This is one. Who do you? I'll let you start with. I think the discussion really is between the Jets and the Dolphins for number 1, right? And then we can talk about 2, 3, 4 from there. I'll let you go first on the Jets versus the Dolphins running back room. I don't think we should just rank the starters here. I think it's the overall room. And I think that's why the Dolphins are in the conversation, because I am taking Hall over Mostert any day of the week. But when you have A-Chain in there, obviously the draft pick of Jalen Wright, where do you fall on the Jets versus the Dolphins?
Yeah, well, making it a unit ranking is what makes it tough, because I would take Hall over any running back. Like I had him number 1 in our roster rankings. I think he's going to be the top running back this year. But as much as we like Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, Devon A-Chain already had an insane season last year as the complement to a guy who also had the most touchdowns in the league in Mostert. So it's a really good duo. And the Jets could have a duo on that level between Allen and Hall. but we just don't know yet. So that does lean towards Miami, but Hall is also the best player. So it's like, how do you balance the best duo versus the best player? This is tough. I really want to lean towards objective on everyone because I feel like, we're Jets fans. I feel like we're both generally pretty optimistic. So I feel like if there's a toss up, I'm usually going to take the other team just so we're being fair. And I think in the end, even doing that, the Jets are still probably going to come out pretty well, potentially on top. So just to be objective, I will take the Dolphins here, number 1, and put the Jets 2. Are you on the same page with that, or
I'm gonna be objective, and I'm gonna put the Jets at 1.
Okay.
It's fine. It's fine. Like, and we talk about, hey, a wiggle room point here or there, and kind of compare the points at the end. But for me personally, like, realistically, just on paper, I'd take one of these groups. I'm taking the Jets because of Hall. Like that just is what it is. I like the depth more than the Dolphins for sure. I'll take A-Chain and Wright and all that stuff, but Hall's going to get 60 or probably like 70 to 80% of the touches here. And he's a guy who you're talking about could be the number 1 running back in the NFL. That's not Mostert. That's not A-Chain. I like their depth more, but I'm taking Hall because he could legitimately be the best player in the NFL at his position. So I'll take the Jets 1, the Dolphins 2. Again, we'll talk about the wiggle room at the points later. I would say Pat's 3. I'll take the Pats 3. I like Stevenson.
I do like Stevenson. It's a good division for running back because James Cook had a really nice season too. But Stevenson, it kind of gets overshadowed because their offense has been so bad. But he really is a playmaker.
He's a good player.
We've seen it against the Jets. Really strong runner.
Like you put Cook in Stevenson's shoes last year. I don't think Cook does nearly as well. He's an explosive offense. Stevenson's put in a really shitty position. And Stevenson he's a damn good player. Like I like Stevenson quite a bit. So I would personally put the Pats 3, the Bills 4.
Yeah, I agree. And plus, Ty Johnson did some good stuff, but we watched him with the Jets. So we knew there were some holes to his game versus Antonio Gibson is a good receiver out of the backfield. So I would say Pats. Yeah.
Pats. Rivka thinks that you put the Bills above him, saying Stevenson was bad last year. But again, like based on analytics, because look at his situation. Like their offense was brutal. Their quarterbacks were brutal. So you're anticipating the running back not being good. And you could say Breece Hall did that. Breece Hall is a top 3 running back in the NFL. Stevenson's a solid running back, in my opinion, a really shitty spot. That's why running backs are the least valuable position. But I think if you put Stevenson on the Bills roster last year, he does better than James Cook did. That's my opinion. Could be wrong. I'm completely fine with it. So moving on to the next spot again, we'll have some wiggle room. I don't think we're not going to do like fullback, right? We probably just do what is this, receiver? Okay,
yeah.
So Dolphins 1. Right. I don't think that's in question. They have 2 legitimate number 1s. Mike Williams healthy. Okay. Maybe it's a discussion, but I'm taking Odell Beckham over R3. Well, maybe not. If it's Corley, like, okay, that's a discussion there. But it's really the 1-2 punch for them. Just to me, it's better than anything in the division. Even if you question their depth and anything like that. But they even have some solid depth, right? You got Beckham, and then you got Barrios, who's an okay player. Eric, I think that I don't know how to say the last name, but he was a draft pick from a couple of years ago. But Dolphins 1, Jets 2.
This one's pretty easy. Right? I think it's Dolphins, Jets, Bills, Pats.
Yeah, so we got 1 for the Dolphins in this one, which again obviously is pretty. And then I think the Jets are a clear number 2, right? Like the Bills and the Pats are not even close. And then you said the Bills or the Pats the Bills and the Pats both, like their receiver rooms really suck.
both really weak. But at least with the Bills, like Curtis Samuel has been
Curtis
decent.
Samuel,
Keon Coleman's high 2nd round pick.
Yeah,
but the Pats is just like, it's pretty much nothing. So
yeah.
I still think as much as the Bills is a question, I still think it's pretty clear over New England.
So bad though. Like even if
Curtis Samuel was pretty solid Coleman, last year too, but
yeah.
But they just don't
Matt
like
Collins.
It's really important nowadays to have like a top guy, and they want to, maybe Shakir, Coleman, like don't want to rule it out. Maybe one of them emerges as that, but like in a division with Garrett Wilson and Tyreek Hill, it's. Especially for a team that relied so heavily on Stephon Diggs as the clear-cut number 1 guy, for the last 4 years. I think it'll be an adjustment for them.
Yeah, the Pats, man. KJ Osborne, Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas,
Jalen ACL too.
Oh, God, yeah, they're bad, man. This is like that's like almost as bad as that famous picture from the Jets. Is like, what is it? The Bears picture. We're playing the Bears
Richard,
that one year.
Matthews, Deontay Burnett, Andre Roberts, Jermaine Kearse.
Oh my God! Wow, good recall there. That was good. So we have the ranking from them. I guess we'll go to tight end now.
Tight end.
Yeah, tight end and then can you do the entire offensive lines? You're not going to be able to do the entire offensive lines with this one.
Yeah, they have it sorted by each position. Okay. I mean, we could bring it up in a different angle. Like I have all the team pages too. I mean, we could do that too. But
yeah, if you want to do the team just for the offensive line, but for tight end, where do you stand? I'll let you take the lead here in terms of okay. So I think in terms of ranking, like you want to start with the easiest, whether it be the fourth or the first. I would say the Bills are probably the first, right? With Kincaid and Knox, or I think they're definitely one, right? We would trade transparently Conklin and Ruckert for Kincaid and Knox. Yeah. So I think that they are one. Jets are two here again. Is that where or do you think the Jets maybe three? Where do you stand on because the Pats do have decent tight ends at least. They have Hunter Henry, Hooper. That's not a bad duo. So where do you stand on? I think the Bills are clearly one, but who do you think is two?
Yeah, I think it's fair to include the Pats in this discussion because I mean Hunter Henry's been solid. Austin Hooper is kind of fallen off from where he was, but at least he's been a starter. And it's like you have to be fair in these conversations. As much as we like Ruckert, like who is Jeremy Ruckert to every other fan base in the league? He's not any different than Durham Smythe is here or any of these other guys. So you do have to be realistic in that way. So, but I think Conklin is enough to put the Jets over because like his game is just a lot more well-rounded than I think it's given credit for between like being a solid blocker, solid route runner, good hands. Like Hunter Henry, I feel like is more of a red zone type of guy, maybe not as complete as a Conklin. And Austin Hooper's kind of last few years hasn't done that much as a receiver.
Banged up too, Hunter Henry, right?
Yeah. He has injuries too. So I think it's fair to have Conklin give the Jets the edge over New England here. And then I would say Miami's probably last. I mean, Jonnu Smith has had some solid years, but I don't think he's in the conversation against the other two units here. So I think Jets 2, Pats 3, Dolphins 4th makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate argument for the Pats over the Jets. Like I think on a Pats show they would say that they're number 2 there, and I wouldn't contest them too much. Like okay, I get it. Like I'm taking Austin Hooper over Jeremy Ruckert at this point for 1 year. He's proven something Jeremy Ruckert hasn't. Hunter Henry's okay, but he's been injured. And again, maybe it's a little bit of Jets bias, but I do think Conklin's way underrated. So I'll take the Jets at 2 there as well. Pats easily 3. And then the Dolphins, Jonnu Smith, Durham, Smythe, there's nothing really there for them. And then even we have a Dolphins fan in here saying that Achane will have more yards in spring. I will bet you whatever you have in your bank account, that is not true, Daniel. If you want to throw the money, we'll both donate it to Nania. We'll put $1,000 on it. I send Nania 1,000. You send Nania 1,000. I want to see yours first. I will match you, and then Nania will send the money to the winner at the end of the year. I will bet $1,000 on that because he's not. There's just absolutely no way your backup running back is going to have more than him. But here we are. Let me know if you want to do it.
All right,
Daniel.
so O-line.
Yeah, O-line. You send 1,000 first, though, Daniel. Well, I'll do it because I will do it. All right, yeah, offensive line. If you could bring up the entire group. This one is I'm trying to because I know like the Pats have had solid offensive lines in years past. I know the Dolphins lost Hunt, they lost Williams, right? Bills, Dawkins, they lost Morse though. Yeah, I don't know. I have to really see the groups.
All right, here's Bills.
So we got Bills group. Dawkins, David Edwards. This is like more like I'm hoping you're going to help me out with this one, like analytical stuff with some of these offensive linemen. Connor McGovern, decent, right? Torrance is okay. Spencer Brown has not been good unless he bounced back this year, which I don't believe he did. So And what are your thoughts about them overall as a group when you look at this offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, their offensive line has been pretty underrated part of their success recently. I mean, they've usually been pretty good, but I think a lot of that was from the continuity. Like, they never have been that star-studded, other than Dawkins, I guess. Yeah, I mean, Dawkins is a higher end left tackle. Other than that, they haven't been super, like, the whole has been greater than the sum, I would say, for them. But a lot of that was the continuity, and now they don't have Mitch Morse in there anymore. He was there for like the past 5 years, I think. But McGovern is a good replacement. I mean, he's a pretty good player.
Yeah.
So I still think this is a solid group. I mean, Spencer Brown at right tackle, the Jets have beat him up. He was like a backup caliber type player, I think. So I still think it's pretty solid without, obviously it's always hard. It's hard for any position to talk about another team's players with the same expertise that we can with the Jets, but especially offensive line. But I think it's fair to consider them a solid offensive line. But,
okay. And then we know about the Jets,
Miami's.
obviously. Yeah. Dirty old Jets fan, aka Walt, says, do you think Jordan Travis sees any time? Based on the report that he's not as far along as the Jets hoped he was in terms of injury, I would venture to guess this is a complete redshirt year for him. He doesn't see any preseason time. And somebody asked about why we have 5 quarterbacks. It's because you have Tyrod, you have Rodgers, Travis is the 3, and then the 4th and the 5th are battling for that 4th spot. So Dolphins, Armstead, good player when he's healthy. Isaiah Wynn at left guard. Aaron Brewer at center, who we were a little bit interested in as a center for the Jets, I think, a couple of years ago. Robert Jones, Austin Jackson. What do you think about the Dolphins group overall?
Well, they took some hits this year. I mean, they lost Robert Hunt, who was one of their best guys. Obviously, they still have Armstead, but, he, like Tyron Smith, is a very good veteran, but does have the durability concerns. I believe there was another starter they lost. Oh, Connor Williams, I think it was.
Yep.
But he had the ACL injury. So yeah, they lost some talent. Aaron Brewer, I think we were talking about as more of like a backup, if I recall correctly, when we were thinking about the Jets signing him.
You're right.
Yeah, and Isaiah Wynn was a backup for them last year. I remember he was on New England and was a backup, kind of swing starter. So they lost some talent. They didn't really replace it. And it was a big part of their success. And this is why maybe I would change my running back pick, because as good as that duo is, they did block really well. And a lot of that was scheme. It's very well cooked up. Like, a lot of their big runs were just like a, end around or like a sweep.
Getting horizontal.
Getting horizontal, like all the yards were there regardless of the blocking. So scheme was a lot of making the offensive line look good too. So maybe they'll just scheme it up well again and make these guys look just as
I think
good
they're a below average group. I really do.
But with those losses, like, it's below average is fair. This is not a bad offensive line, but yeah, it's below average seems fair to me.
I think it's below average that will be elevated by scheme, but overall, when you look at the actual roster, I think it's below average offensive line. And then we finally have the Pats as well. Let's see. So we got Okafor, who Rivka just said I think is they're in trouble at left tackle. Cole Strange, who is on PUP and has not been great. David Andrews, solid player. We know that, right? City Sow, I'll be honest, I have absolutely no idea. And then Micah Wenu is a solid right tackle, right? Like, he's okay. Yeah. He's decent. So looking at this offensive line, if you had to stack up the groups, I have my preliminary. I'll tell you if it matches mine exactly what you'd or if you have the same ranking that I do. Who's 4, who's 3, who's 2, who's 1 in this one for you?
So I would go the 4 and verse 3 is probably the hardest one for me, but I would say 4. I'd say New England 4th, Miami 3rd, Buffalo 2nd, Jets 1st.
Yep. I'm with you. And the Jets do have some injury concerns and all that stuff, but the concern is ABT and Tyron. Like I'm not so worried about Morgan Moses. Tyron Smith, hopefully, he matches what he did last year, 12, 13 games. ABT, we'll see. But I think the Jets, just because of their ceiling with this one, you're gonna take you're gonna take the Jets over these offensive line. And they might not say that, other rivals, because that's what rivals do and everybody elevates their own team. But Tyron Smith is still a top 5 left tackle when healthy. Simpson is an okay guard. Obviously Titman is a first team all rookie. ABT is a stud when he's healthy, and Morgan Moses is a solid right tackle. I'm taking the Jets at number 1 there as well. Now I guess we'll go right to
corner pulled up here. If you want to start with that.
Yeah. We could do corner. And
Okay.
for me, it's the Jets are 1, right? Like the Jets have the best cornerback group in the NFL. And even their 4, Eccles is solid. Stigger's making some noise, but it doesn't matter. Sauce Reed, Michael Carter second. It's number 1. I really don't care what anybody else has to say about that, because they're wrong if you're not putting the Jets 1, or at least number 1 in the division. Now in terms of
also, this is only showing, I think, out because Carter's not on here. I think they've nickel back separate. So we could pull this up as well.
Tyron Johnson's solid. Marcus Jones is solid. Kader Kohu, not so sure about how good he is with the Dolphins, but I think it's easily the Jets 1, right? You put the Dolphins at 2, or who would you put at 2? And maybe tell me if I'm wrong if we're not putting the Jets 1 there, but
no, definitely Jets number 1. Number 2, I mean, the Bills kind of have a good case. Like Christian Benford was good last year. Taron Johnson is right up there with Carter in that conversation for the best slot corner. And Ramsey's still really good, but I don't know if he's still quite to the level of, second highest rated Madden corner and all that. So
he's still like a top 15 guy, but not like a top 5 guy anymore.
Yeah, so I would put the Bills second here, and then Miami third. But I mean, New England should be in this as well. Like as much as you can clown on New England's offense, deservedly so, they're probably going to be a good defensive team. Like they still were last year, even with Judon missed time, Gonzalez missed time, and they were still solid, even with that offense doing nothing for them. So it should be a good defensive team, and this cornerback group can be part of that. So, but I think Ramsey is enough. Even if he's not quite the same, I think he's enough to put them over the Pats. So I would say Miami 3rd, New England 4th. But all these are good units, I would say. Yeah,
and I kind of like what Rivka said. Like it's the Jets 1 and the other 3 tied for 2. I would personally probably put the Dolphins over the Bills. Just I really do like Kendall Fuller. I think he's a really good player from what I've seen of him throughout the years. But again, there's wiggle room, a point or two here. But I'll put what you put as well. And the Pats, like you said, Jonathan Jones, solid player. Christian Gonzalez, really good rookie year. They have some talent there as well. So corner now move, I guess, to safety, right? This is going to be an interesting one. I don't think the Jets are not going to finish 1 here.
No.
They might finish. So number 1. You have to say it's the Dolphins, right? At least in my opinion, looking at these, and this is mostly the starters, but Holland is a really good free safety. Poyer at this point, and we'll see, drop off all that stuff, but at least he's a decent veteran, strong safety in my opinion. So, but I really like Javon Holland, so I would probably put them 1. Probably the Pats 2, in my opinion. And then past that, I would have the Jets and then the Bills. Am I off there? I think you can have a conversation about the Jets being 4 here, but I would say Dolphins 1, Pats 2, Jets 3, Bills 4.
Yeah, I agree with that because, like you said, Holland is a really good safety. Poyer is definitely not at his peak anymore, but probably still a solid starter. Pats have a really good duo there. With Peppers had a really good season last year. Duggar, I'm not entirely sure where he stacks up at this point, but he was a 2nd-round pick. He's still starting for them, so probably
he was really good a few years ago. I don't know if he carried over this year, but I like Duggar when I watch him play. I think he's a chess piece.
So that's a good pairing. Then probably a pretty big gap after those 2, and then I mean, I guess what you give to the Jets is that the Bills have Bishop, but he's a rookie. You don't know what you'll get from him, and Taylor Rapp has kind of bounced around. Hasn't been a highly valued player.
He's like a good 3 in my opinion, not a starter.
Like I think he mostly got signed to very cheap deals. Like I remember when the Jets needed safety a couple years ago, he had good numbers, but then kind of just got signed to a cheap deal. So It doesn't seem like he's very highly valued. I don't know. I guess the Bills and Jets are pretty interchangeable because I think Clark and Rapp is probably similar. And we really like Chuck Clark, but again, just objective lens, probably pretty similar. Then Adams is young player, kind of a wild card, similar to Bishop, second round pick. So you can kind of go either way with this one.
Yeah, the only thing I will say is I like Clark a lot, and like him as a starting strong safety. I think he's a solid strong safety in the league. Where I do think Rapp is more of like a high end backup or like a below average starter. So I would actually say that the only thing I'd argue there is that I'm definitely taking Clark over Rapp. Adams versus Bishop again. One's a rookie. I think Adams is versatile though. So I would put the Jets at 3 there and the Bills at 4, and then And then Rivka says, what about Peppers and Duggar? I like Duggar. Peppers has had a resurgence with the Pats. I still don't think he's a great player, but Javon Holland, in my opinion, is the best player in the division. That's in terms of safeties. I really like him. And then somebody else brought up a good point. Like Marcus May is not a bad pickup either as depth. I would take him on the Jets right now. As a depth player, like bring him in, cut Isaiah Oliver. Like I would do that any day. So I like him as well. So that adds to the point that they're number 1. Okay, so I guess we're going from back to the front. Want to do linebacker now? Well, it's inside and outside, right? So we could do, because I think it gets a little bit complicated with linebacker, right? Because you have teams who play 4-3, some who play 3-4. So you kind of got to
Quincy Williams listed on this. He's probably an outside. Yeah. So it's a little weird, the listings at this point, but you can kind of get the feeling for it. So, Bills, Milano, Terrell Bernard, Dolphins, Long, Brooks, then Pats, Bentley, and Tavai.
But for the Dolphins, I'm not counting. Like when we talk about defensive linemen, I'm putting Chubb and Phillips on their defensive line, not at linebacker.
Defensive line.
Like Judon's not a linebacker to me. Milano obviously is, so we have to consider him.
The off-ball linebackers.
Yeah, off-ball linebacker. Again, I don't know if am I being biased here. Like the Jets are 1 again, right? You're talking about Quincy Williams, who was in the top 100 rated above Quinnen and Sauce, which is crazy, but nonetheless, he's still an all-pro linebacker. Mosley has lost a step, but he's still a top 15 guy, right? Like he's still a solid linebacker. If the Bills had Milano and like Edmonds like a few years ago, I might give it to the Bills because I really like Milano. But Quincy's an all-pro. Like you're talking about an all-pro guy now next to Mosley with Sherwood as depth as well. They are number 1. We would probably say the Bills are 2, right? Am I crazy there?
Just off of Milano, I think. Even coming off an injury, I would give him that because he's probably like a top 5 linebacker.
And then who would you have 3?
And then Miami. So who were we saying are Miami's? Let me pull that one up again.
They're really
Long
on there.
Brooks.
Long and Brooks.
Pats, Bentley, and Tavai. To be honest,
so we're picking the Dolphins, right?
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, Brooks was solid with the Seahawks, right?
I think so. To be honest, I don't have a ton of knowledge on any of these players. I don't think. So they're
I know that Brooks was solid. I believe with Seattle, unless I'm mistaken. And then Long is a guy who's bounced around a little bit, but decent veteran. Anthony Walker, older vet, but still a decent guy. So I would put them 3. And then the Pats 4 there. And then going to what we have to finish up with the defensive line, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So defense. This is actually lining up perfectly because I got to jump off in like 7 minutes. So this is good. David Long is one of the worst covered linebackers in the NFL. Okay, that's fine. Is he worse than who the Pats have? I don't know. I've heard what I could say is I've heard David Long's name. The Pats linebackers, I don't know who they are. So you get a little bit of credit because I know who you are. I'm not saying he's good. I'm definitely not saying he's good, but defensive line, this is another spot where this division they've lost some talent though, right? You lost Christian Wilkins, who always had good games against the Jets.
So I got
who are you taking one here? I'll let you do.
Didn't Barmore just have blood clots announced recently?
Yeah, he did.
I'm not sure how much time is gonna be out with that.
But we'll assume he's healthy.
He's a really good player. Okay,
I guess.
So here's D tackle. Obviously Wilkins not being there for Miami is pretty big because he's a great player. Ed Oliver's very good pass rusher on the inside. So, I mean, all these teams have one good guy, but Quinnen obviously is above
the best,
all of them,
but easily
without even really being close.
The Bills, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones is good. Barmore and Gotcha, whatever is however you say that is good. The Dolphins obviously they're lacking a little bit, right? I don't know. Maybe it's ignorance, but to hear Tart, okay.
Let's bring it up to D end.
Yeah. So we got D end, Gregory Rousseau, Epinesa.
They don't have
Zach
Reddick
Zeiler.
listed here. He's probably on outside linebacker, but we're including him in this.
Campbell, Gallimore, Campbell.
Oh, and then also for Miami, they're also probably an outside linebacker, but Chubb and Phillips would be in
which is a good duo. They're just hurt right now, right? Well, I think both of them are hurt, but they have a really good duo there. So I'll let you take this one from I'll let you take this one, Nania. A little bit difficult, but here you are being put on the spot.
Yeah, I think Jets are one. I mean, Quinnen Williams, second best defensive tackle in the league. I think that's fair to say. Maybe the best by the end of this year.
Maybe the third, but even if that's the lowest you're putting him.
Yeah, so he's the best defensive lineman in the division. So I think that is a huge start. And then you compliment him with Hassan Reddick, who is probably right on par with all these other edge rushers, at least on par. So I think Jets number, and then Jermaine Johnson is like your third best guy. So even that is like, he's on par with like a Russo, Epinesa. So yeah, I think Jets number one is pretty fair. Then after that, with Miami having lost Wilkins, I think it goes to Buffalo. Ed Oliver, Rousseau, Epinesa, Daquan Jones, solid, well-rounded group. And then Miami, like the edge pairing is good with Phillips and Chubb, but coming off injury, they don't have as much inside now as they used to. So I'll put them 3. And then New England, it's kind of just well, they do have Judon.
I think I might put the Pats with Barmore and Judon. I'm more scared of Barmore and Judon than I am of Phillips and
that's fair. Because I forgot about Judon because he wasn't on this picture, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna put the Pats 3 there. I'm gonna give the Pats
we
some
put Pats 3. Yeah.
Okay. So do we want to include coaching in here? Should we do roster? Or should we do like special teams? It's hard to quantify, right? Like I think we're just gonna say we're the best, but we don't really know the other kickers and stuff. So I feel like that's a little bit unfair. Do we want to include coaching in here? Do you think that's should we do that, or
I think it's
should we just count it?
Yeah,
worth including. Okay, so coaching wise, we're not putting the Jets 1, right? I think so. Right now, I'm gonna put. And stop me when I'm wrong here. Pats at 4 because they're a complete question mark. You have no idea what Rod Mayo is, right?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I think I would personally put the Jets 3 there. I think they have great defensive coaching and stuff like that, but their offensive coaching is not ideal. I would take Mike McDaniel over Saleh. Again, just gun to my head. Who do I want? I would take I'm forgetting on the Buffalo's head coach's name right now, but I'm taking him over Saleh too, probably. So would you valid there? Pats 4, Jets 3. Who would you put at 2 if the Jets are 3?
Yeah, 4-3, I totally agree with. 1 versus 2 is a hard one because I lean Bills because, they have a more established culture going there. They've been competitive for longer. They've won.
He does love terrorists, though. Remember, he loves terrorists.
They won divisions, but they do love terrorists. Sean McDermott does. But so you have like the establishment there, but also like when I watch these two teams, I feel like the coaching has more of an effect with Miami because it's like so much of that offense is just Mike McDaniel being a wizard. Like their offensive line talent wasn't amazing, but they made it look like it is. Those running backs weren't considered amazing, but the scheme makes it look like Tua wasn't the greatest quarterback of all time until Mike McDaniel shows up, and now he has the league leading stats. So, like, I feel like even though the Bills are more established, McDaniel has a more tangible effect through scheme and game planning. So
I put him 1.
Kind of lead Miami. Yeah.
I put him 1. Okay, Nania. So I have to jump off in like 2 minutes here. So I have to do these calculations relatively quickly. Do you have a calculator in hand on your computer? Yeah. Unless you want to do it in your head, which I'm not trying to do it. Are you ready for a bunch of numbers and to add them up?
Yes.
Okay. So we got and let me know if I'm going too fast here. 2 plus 1 plus 2 +2,
Yeah.
+1, +1, +3, +1, +1, +3. Total number
17.
Okay. I'm not giving you the teams.
Okay.
We got 1 +4 +3 +1 +2 +2 +4 +6. I added the
23.
last. Okay. I added the last 3 in my head. That's great math. We got 3 +2 +1 +4 +3 +3 +1 +3 +5.
25.
Okay. And we have the last one, which is the Pats, which you'll notice very quickly. 4 +3 +4 +3 +4 +4 +2 +11.
35.
Okay. So the first team was the Jets, which was what number?
17.
Okay. So the Jets are at 17. The Bills were at 24. What was the second number?
I told you the numbers. I thought you took them down.
Okay.
It's like
so we'll
24 or 25 or something.
Okay. So do you want to do those two again really quickly?
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. So this is the Bills. 1 +4 +3 +1 +8 +6.
23.
23. And then the Pats was like 35 or something really high.
Yeah.
The Dolphins were I'll just do it. 5, 6, 10, 16, 17, 25. Okay, so I should have done it like that.
So the Jets
we have
win.
the Jets.
That's the story.
Yeah, Jets win. I think you can give a wiggle point or two where maybe they're 19, 20. Give the Bills a few points, give the Dolphins a few points. But I think this exercise proves that the Jets have the best roster in the AFC East. Nania, last words for the chat.
Training
See you in
camp.
2 weeks.
Doesn't matter. See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate all you guys. You'll see Nani in 2 weeks. Next week, I might do a 53-man roster prediction with Savo. I forget exactly, but I'll be back next Thursday, Friday, sometime like